We often think of faith and reason as being on opposite teams, right? Like they're enemies. Well, today, we're talking about a Turkish thinker who spent his entire life arguing the exact opposite. We're diving into the work of Professor Hüsamettin Erdem, a man who dared to build a bridge between philosophy and theology, right when the gap between them seemed wider than ever. And this quote? It's basically the key to his entire life's work. At a time when academic circles were treating philosophy and religion as totally separate, even hostile fields, Erdem came along with this pretty radical idea. They don't just get along, they actually need each other. To really understand the world, he said, you've got to have both. So to really get why Erdem's work was such a big deal, you have to understand the world he stepped into. For a long time in 20th century Turkey, the academic scene was really dominated by materialism, the idea that only the physical world is real, and positivism, which basically said, if you can't prove it with science, it's not real knowledge. And that effectively pushed all those big spiritual and metaphysical questions right off the table.
But here's the thing. Erdem wasn't just some lone voice crying out in the wilderness. He was actually a leading figure in a whole new wave of thinkers. And their mission was huge. It wasn't just about debating ideas. It was about bringing back an entire dimension of human thought, metaphysics, spirituality, theology, that had been dismissed as irrelevant. They believed that without it, our picture of reality was just incomplete.
So, you gotta ask, how does someone end up becoming a bridge between these two massive worlds? Well, for Erdem, the answer is really in his unique educational journey, a path that he deliberately chose to bring together the very traditions he wanted to unite. Yeah, this was not your typical academic path. This was a statement. Think about it. He gets a degree in Islamic theology, and then, just 1 year later, boom, a degree in secular philosophy. He was doing this on purpose, immersing himself in both worlds so he could speak both languages. It gave him this rare fluency that allowed him to see connections where everyone else only saw walls. No thinker just pops up out of nowhere. They're all shaped by their teachers. And Erdem's journey was guided by this incredible group of people, from the high school teacher who first got him excited about philosophy to the university professors who helped him sharpen his arguments. But for Erdem, there was one mentor who really stood above all the rest. And you don't have to take my word for it. Erdem himself gives all the credit to Ahmet Mukhtar Bukçınar. And listen to how he describes him, not just a teacher, but a father figure. This wasn't just about getting academic advice. This was deep, personal mentorship, the kind of guidance that really sets you on your path for life. Okay, so before he could even start building this bridge, Erdem knew he had to get his definitions straight. He figured a lot of the fighting between philosophy and theology was just, confusion. So he went back to basics and asked the most fundamental question: what even is philosophy? For Erdem, philosophy wasn't just some abstract thing you do in an armchair. No way. It was a serious, disciplined effort to solve actual problems. And the rules were tough. It had to be based on facts, it had to be logical, and you had to be unbiased. For him, philosophy was a powerful tool for finding truth, not just a game you play with ideas. Now, this next part is absolutely crucial. Erdem draws a really sharp line between what he calls a philosophe and a Felsefe. A true philosophe, he says, is an incredibly rare, once-in-a-generation genius. We're talking about your Platos, your Aristotles, your Kants. These are people who build an entire system of thought from the ground up. Everyone else, from professors to students, is a Felsefe, a scholar of philosophy. And this is where you see his real intellectual humility. He put himself squarely in that second camp. By calling himself a felsefeci, he wasn't putting himself down. He was actually showing this incredible respect for the massive, monumental task of the true philosophe and the high standards the field demands. All right, so with his definitions locked in, Erdem could finally get to the heart of his life's work, showing that religion and philosophy weren't enemies fighting over the truth, but partners searching for it together. And he used some really powerful metaphors to get this point across. He called them süt kardeşler, or milk siblings, nourished by the same source of truth, but still their own unique individuals. And my favorite one, he compared them to the two wings of a bird. You need both to fly, right? Alone, each one is stuck on the ground, but together they let you soar to a higher understanding. So how did he fit it all together? Well, here's his framework for knowledge. And what's cool is that it doesn't throw science out the window. It builds right on top of it. He says knowledge starts with our senses and our experiences. Then reason comes in to organize it all and make sense of it. But, and this is the key part, he says reason isn't the end of the line. There's a fourth step, intuition. A higher kind of insight that, he argued, opens a rational door to the possibility of divine revelation as a totally valid source of truth. And you see this exact same logic when he talks about ethics. He basically puts morality from human reason side by side with morality from religion. And just look at the difference. The scope of human morality is just this life, right? But religious morality covers everything from before birth to after death. And the reasons to be good, the sanctions, they're just stronger. It's not just your conscience or what other people think, it's also divine law and the whole concept of an afterlife. So after a whole lifetime of this work, what's Professor Erdem's lasting impact? Well, it's not just a bunch of books on a shelf. It's a living, breathing network of people and the institutions that he completely transformed. You know, when someone asked him to name his best students, his answer tells you everything you need to know. He didn't list names. Instead, he pointed to his collective impact, an entire generation of scholars he trained who now run theology departments, who are rectors at universities, who are shaping the intellectual debates all across the country. His legacy wasn't a few stars. It was an entire constellation. And this isn't just a vague idea. You can actually see it in the numbers. Officially, he supervised at least 54 graduate theses, and we know the real number is probably way higher. Just think about that. Each one of those represents a mind he personally shaped, a scholar who then went out and carried his ideas forward, multiplying his impact across the entire academic world of Turkey. Erdem always believed that philosophy can't just sit still. It has to wrestle with the big, new questions of its time. And for him, that meant looking at things like artificial intelligence and genetic engineering, all the stuff we're dealing with right now. And so he kind of leaves us with a challenge, doesn't he? He's asking us to take the tools of rigorous, principled thought and apply them to the huge, messy, complex questions of our own era. So, what are our answers going to be?